I think everyone can relate to this situation where, like, I was tempted. If I'm going to be really honest, I sat in that car and I was tempted to, like, not do it authentically. I'm like, well, maybe I would think things like, well, maybe if I do it their way and it works, and then I can make some money, not go bankrupt, then I'll try it my way. Like, I had all those thoughts. But I also know you can't fake authenticity. I also know that, like, there's no way, and this is what a lot of people get wrong in their businesses. There is no way to have a human connection with someone else, like a true connection, unless you show up fully authentically, like, for better or worse. There's just no way. And people that even know that forget that your relationship with your customer is the same. It's the same. And I remember sitting in that car going, if I'm truly going to connect with, you know, every person watching at home, like, I have to fully show up with my authentic intention for this product.
So I thought this was like a big setback in my life happening. And so many times entrepreneurs out there, right? Things start with a problem they want to solve, or an experience they had they weren't expecting, or whatever it was. So in that season, I thought, oh, this is the worst thing. Like, I finally got a great job in TV. And so anyways, I started spending my paycheck on makeup and, like, trying to figure it out. And I'd buy the most expensive department stores if I could afford it, or get the free samples, or the least expensive drugstore, or the pro makeup. And I was like, why is nothing working for me? And then two things happened. One was a deep kind of knowing that didn't make sense, because I knew nothing about the beauty industry, nothing. I knew no one, had no connections. I got this, like, deep kind of inkling, this knowing, like, oh, if I can actually figure out how to create a product that works for me, it's probably also going to help a lot of other people that, just like me, can't find anything that works for them. So I had that instinct. The second thing that in some ways was almost more important, without me realizing it, I right in front of me realized a deeper why behind the why of why I was going to do this business. And what I mean by that is, when I couldn't find anything that worked out there, I all of a sudden realized, like, oh, my whole life I've seen these magazine ads, these television commercials, and every model in them, like, has perfect skin. I don't even know if they're wearing the product they're selling. And I realized that my whole, and I know, Dean, you have a daughter, my whole growing up, my whole life, I'd always seen these commercials and these ads, and I always aspired to look that way. But, like, I also, deep down inside, they made me feel like I wasn't enough.
Yeah.
And I had this realization, oh, you know what? If I can create a product that works, but more importantly, a mission around using, like, real people as models, like all ages, sizes, skin tones, like skin challenges, and call them beautiful and mean it. Like, what if I could shift culture in the beauty industry for every little girl out there is about to start learning to doubt herself, and
but she's enough exactly the way she is.
Exactly. Every grown woman who still does. And so it became this, like, thing that happened where it was like, oh, I have this feeling I'm supposed to do this. I don't know what the heck I'm doing. And more than that, this deeper pain, this deeper wound, I realized, oh, if I can actually affect that for other people, that and that kind of deep why was actually what helped fuel the journey, which I didn't know was going to be 3 years of rejection and no's, and down to no money and no one believing in my dream.
Yeah. And, you know, it makes total sense. The more I get to know you and the more I hear your story, is it makes sense, because you need a deep, strong why to pull you through the millions of no's and being sent out of a place where you probably went out in your car and cried and said, why am I doing this? And all those types of things. You know, I know that journey, we could bypass all the ups and downs and say, and you got to do this amazing deal with L'Oreal. But I'd love to share, you know, again, I have some questions I want to get, but I want people to know the story. I'd love for you to share that story, because the story of when you were rejected and you had the nerve to say, would you mind just telling me the truth on why?
Yeah.
Because I want everybody to listen through this through a lens of knowing that we've all been in this position. We've all had the rejection, told it won't work. We weren't smart enough, weren't pretty enough, weren't young enough, weren't rich enough, weren't educated enough. And we have two choices when those things happen in life. We let it accumulate and we let it build up to a point where you go, maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I'm the wrong size. Maybe I'm wrong shape. Maybe I live in the wrong area. Or we find a way to make it our strength. It becomes the anchor you drag across the desert or the wind behind the sails as you go across the ocean to new frontiers. And I know it's a subtle little difference. And one of the things I hope that will, I always say in on this podcast is take what serves you from this and put the rest on hold. But in this shifting time of uncertainty in our world where you don't know what's going to change, we don't know what's next. Maybe your career, your life, your business has shifted. We need that. We need to be armored. We need the tools and we need the mindset to go, okay, this was a setback. This was maybe designed for me. As hard as it is, that's a must. If you are listening to me, you want another level of life. And that's why I love having Jamie here. And I really want you to hear this story, but put yourself in these shoes. And then I got some great questions I think will anchor in how Jamie got there.
So, it's funny when you said that one story of rejection, literally like 100 first entered my mind. There were so many, Dean. It was, I thought when you just launch a product, if it works, like it's just going to sell, people are going to get it. And, it was every retailer was saying no, every department's or QVC. My dream was to go on QVC and prove live the product works. I don't need a fake ad. And, I want to show live, right? Those were all my dreams. And every single one of them said no, like for years. And so we got to this point where we were down to under $1,000 in our bank account, which was our company bank account, but also our personal bank account. And we got an inbound interest from a private equity company who saw like how good our product was, right? And because we were selling like 2 to 3 orders a day on our website. So somehow they heard about it. And I was so excited because this was a private equity company that had created so many products most of us buy in grocery stores and things like that, not created them, but invested in them a lot of times when they were small and helped them scale to be household names. And I thought, oh my gosh, like if they invest in us, A, we're not going to go bankrupt. B, maybe they can use their contacts or their leverage to help finally get us into some of these retailers that I'm dreaming of selling my product in, who all keep saying no and we're not the right fit and all that. I was so excited. And so we took meetings. We started the meetings process and it was going really, really well. Then the diligence process where they do like your projections, your financial, all that stuff. We got down to the final meeting and I was like, and my husband and I flew in for it. And I thought like, oh, like I was so excited, right? And because it really sucks when you don't know how you're going to make it, and you have no proof of your own.
You're working straight off of courage because there's no proof that you're going to make it through this.
You get courage and $1 hot dogs from this Costco stand, and you know what I mean. And it's just like
been there.
So, So we flew out and I was like so fired up. And I'll never forget this. My husband, Paulo, was standing right next to me and their head investor was about 3 feet from me. And they're super nice, super kind, everything. And then he says to me, he's like, so we're really rooting for you and thank you for all this info and all the meetings. And we love your product, but we're going to pass on investing in IT Cosmetics. It's a no. And I remember looking at him and now I was so used to hearing no, right? So by that point, so I was like, oh, okay. Can you share like why? Like why? Because feedback's almost always a gift. Yeah. And I'll never forget, he was like 3 feet from me and he goes, well, do you want me to be really honest with you? Like really honest? I was like, yes, please. Absolutely. And he looks at me and he says, I just don't think women will buy makeup from someone who looks like you, with your body and your weight. And I remember in this moment, like 2 things happened that were for me.
I felt a punch in my stomach just now. So I can't imagine.
Yeah. But like, it was like, I remember it was weird. It was almost like I was watching his lips move and these words come out. First thing is I felt like a lifetime of body doubt and God, body doubt and self-doubt, like flood my whole body. But I felt like I was staring my own fear in the eyes, right? Because obviously this was a situation I'm very aware of my whole life, anyone who struggled with body image issues and stuff like that. So I was watching him say that. I felt like I was staring my own fear in the eyes, and I needed to keep my faith bigger than it. But I also got this gut feeling, right? And if we ever truly like do the work of learning to hear that inner knowing, I instantly got this gut feeling while he was talking that said he's wrong. But I also knew, like, if I was ever going to prove that, I had to figure out like how to believe it for myself, right? And the other thing that happened was, and I think in life we can, take the route of, oh, poor me, I'm a victim of this dude saying horrible things. It's like I actually felt I didn't even get mad. What's crazy about it was I realized in that moment, him saying those words, him passing on investing in my company because of my body, my weight, I was like, oh, you know what? This deep why that I know of why I'm doing what I'm doing to help shift culture and beauty, like he is just a byproduct of the same things I saw growing up. He in his whole life has only learned you have to look one certain way to sell product.
Right. You found a way to
beauty.
actually anchor in your thought process.
I did.
Right.
Yeah,
like, oh my God, this is more proof that I'm right.
More proof. And I'm like, wow, he was a guy, and some guys do wear makeup. He was a guy who didn't wear makeup. I don't even know, you know what I mean? So he directly wasn't affected by that industry. And even he was direct, he was affected by that industry. Right. And he has daughters too, and all these things. And he was making a decision based on his life experiences that told him what was going to succeed and what wasn't. And I realized how he was impacted by the same thing that was going to now drive me to, right. And again, it was a long time after that meeting where I still got knocked down, said no, all those things. But I used what he said and turned it into fuel, because I knew that my mission mattered. I knew it mattered, even if no one else got it at the time. And not to jump ahead, by the way, but just to share this for anyone who's dealing with a big setback right now, like, I really believe it comes down to our mindset and to how we handle it and to how we don't let it turn into doubt in our own head, learn to turn down the volume on it, learn to turn it up into fuel.
Can you tell me I'm just curious, how long did you have this idea in your head?
Well, it was a couple years, because I was just trying to find anything that would work. And one thing that happened that sort of put me over the edge, that I think is really important just to share, especially with anyone out there who, whatever phase they're at in their business or their entrepreneurial journey, is early on, I had a blessing that I look back now and go, thank goodness that happened. And it's really what put me over the edge to really launch this thing and go for it. And, we hear so many amazing thought leaders talk about your why and identifying the why of your business and your brand and your mission. And what I know now, because I've now had the gift of just meeting tens of thousands of entrepreneurs over the years. And a lot of people, I think, they think their why is strong enough, but they haven't actually done the work to peel back the layers and like go deeper and get to the why beneath the why that's so powerful that they can lean on it when the times are super tough and they're tempted to quit. And when I look back at this moment after having this idea for a couple years, one thing that happened so, I guess, serendipitously, or out of sheer grace, I should say, is that, initially I thought like, oh, okay, I can just create a makeup product that if it works for me, it'll probably work for so many other people. So my why could have very easily been like, oh, I'll solve my own problems, but I'll help so many other people too. And I think a why like that is why so many entrepreneurs fail. And here's what I mean by that. Because when we share a why like that with someone else, they're like, that's great. That's so virtuous. That's awesome. And then we think it's enough. If we have a why that's I'm going to help people or this or that, because I did want to help people, but what happened, and I want to call this out for anyone listening, because I think this is really important. Challenge yourself, whatever you believe your mission or your personal why is for your own company. And this isn't something that has to be part of your mission statement. I'm more talking about as a founder, your personal why for why you're doing what you're doing, or perhaps why you have a big goal that you're working on. Is take your why, but then literally go deeper, like peel back the layers and try to go deeper to the deep why beneath the why. And in my case, what happened is I realized, like, at this one moment, and this is what put me over the edge to launch everything, was like, I was like, I don't understand. This makes no sense that there are so many companies. Why do none of them work for me? And then what I realized was like, wait, I've actually never seen a model who has like bright red rosacea selling makeup products, right? And then I started thinking about growing up as a little girl. And what I realized is every time I would see the beauty ads on television or in magazines, like, I loved them. I aspired to, look like them. But at a real deep level, they always made me feel like I wasn't enough. And I had this big moment where I realized, like, okay, I want to launch products that work, but what if when I launch a beauty company, what if I can actually use real people as models and like all different ages and shapes and sizes and skin tones and skin challenges and call them beautiful and mean it. And what if I could actually like shift the definition of beauty inside the entire industry, for every little girl out there who's about to start doubting herself and every grown person who still does. And it was kind of this huge, crazy idea for someone that was sitting there with no money, no connections, not sure how it was even going to happen. But I got that deep, deep, deep why that was so not just painful, but really meaningful, purposeful for me. And that came early on. And, after I jumped into entrepreneurship and, poured every penny I had into it, I didn't know it would be 3 years before I could even afford to pay myself at all. I didn't know that I would get hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of no's. And I think that as founders, as entrepreneurs, as people with big dreams on our heart, we need like a toolbox of things we can pull from that help us maintain our resiliency. And for me, I think one of those real important tools was really that deep, 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 meaningful why, where I realized, okay, what I'm doing is bigger than myself. It's not just about me, right? And the last thing I'll say to this really quickly, because I think sometimes people think their why has to be some like global, grandiose, thing. Sometimes your why, your deep why, may have nothing to do with your actual company, but your deep why may be like, I'm going to be the first person in generations of my family to break a cycle of poverty or of lack, or I'm going to be the first person that, goes for it and doesn't let self-doubt hold me back in my entire family, right? It could be, there's deep whys, or I want to show my children what it looks like to go after a dream. There's a lot of different whys beneath the why, but I think identifying one of those that really truly hits home is such a key, because being a founder or an entrepreneur at any stage, right? I've kind of seen a lot of different stages, from no money, no one believes in you, you're about to go bankrupt for a few years, to private equity investment and massive growth, to we built to over 1,000 employees. And when we eventually were acquired by L'Oreal, it was our largest acquisition in the US in their history. And then I was part of the largest beauty company in the world as well. So it's kind of like I've seen inside all those, and they all come with their challenges. But I think no matter what phase you're at, having that deep, deep why beneath the why is super, super important to do the work for. It's worth spending the time in, for sure.
Yeah, wow. This is really fascinating. I'd love to go a little bit deeper on this process, Jamie, if that's okay with you, because I think you're right. Like, I think people really struggle with that. And I think you see oftentimes, like, when people don't make it work, it's because that sense of purpose, it's that sense of meaning. So I'm curious, kind of, how long ago was this when you kind of, you said you took you 2 years until you had this catalyst. How long ago was that?
So 06 and 07, 2006, 2007. And then I eventually just decided, like, I'm going to go for it. And, it's a funny story, but I was on my honeymoon flight to South Africa and wrote the business plan on my honeymoon with my husband. which is, by the way, the least romantic way to start any marriage, is to write your business plan on your honeymoon. And then for anyone listening who runs their business or with like a loved one or a family or partner or friend, it is wild how difficult it is to navigate like all of the blurring of lines in the relationship. But I think when you go into it the first time, you think like, oh, but you trust that person more than anybody, and it's just going to be great. And it ended up being great, but really hard. But anyhow, wrote the business plan on our honeymoon flight to South Africa, got back, literally quit our jobs. We poured every penny we had into the business, which wasn't much. It was every penny of savings that we had. And I just thought, you know, if we create a product that actually works, like that really truly works, it's just going to sell, right? And I think a lot of entrepreneurs have had this experience where you're like, it's so good, why isn't it selling? Like, why is everyone saying no, and why is it so difficult? And you know, it was 2008 when we had our first product and first couple of products, and I believed in them so much. And, you know, I sent them to every retailer, every department store, every beauty retailer, every online retailer, QVC, which is a live television shopping channel in the US that's broadcast to 100 million homes. And I just had this vision, Nathan, like I saw it so clear. The only problem was no one else did. And it was like, it is so hard when people that, you know, you put on a pedestal, right? Like a lot of these beauty retailers, I mean, I used to save my waitressing tip money to shop in their stores. And I just thought for sure they would love this product because it works. But they didn't. And every single one of them said no after no after no after no after no. And one thing I learned, that I wish I learned this lesson sooner. I would have saved myself so many nights crying myself to sleep. But what I learned, you know, I was trying to do something different, right? I was trying to use, you know, images of real people. I was trying to sort of change the definition of beauty, and it wasn't just about the products that worked. It was about sort of the big picture thing. And every single one of them would say, like, that's not going to work. Like they would always tell me, Nathan, you need to use images of unattainable aspiration. They'd always say those words, unattainable aspiration. And they would say that women will only buy products from images they can never possibly look like. And I got that that's how it's always been done, but I was trying to do it differently. And the biggest lesson that I wish I had learned sooner is, if you are doing something authentic to yourself, which by definition, there's only one of you. So if it's authentic and being done your way, it means it's new, it's novel, it's never been done before. Or if you're doing something crazy innovative or disruptive, or, you know, a product that's never been done before, when you're doing something different or authentic to you, don't be surprised when, you know, even people that tout themselves as visionaries, or they're, you know, heads of industry or heads of, you know, retail or whatever it might be, don't be surprised if even the experts don't believe in what you're doing. Because what I have learned is so many well-intentioned people, really smart people, people that are truly just brilliant and believe they are visionaries, they often cannot believe in something unless they have the psychological sort of social proof that it's already been successful in their mind. Unless they've already seen it successful, they have a hard time actually seeing it working, and because they've never seen proof of it before. And a lot of people don't realize that's how they think. They don't know why they're not believing in something. But what I found was so many people, and they were people that, again, well-intentioned and really, really smart, but they're often incapable of seeing something succeeding unless it's already been done. And so for any founder or entrepreneur or person with big goals or dreams, or even, you know, talent and art and creations you want to put out in the world, what I've learned is you have to get really good at cheering for yourself along this journey, because often people will only cheer for you after you've made it, like after you've proven it. And I used to take it so personal and really try to bounce back, try to remember my why, try to get still and hear my own gut that always said to keep going. But it is hard when you get no after no after no. And, 20 no's in, it's like you start to think like, well, maybe this isn't going to work, or was my gut wrong? You know what I mean? And I think those are the moments when you get still, and some people might pray, some people might meditate, some people might just try to hear what is their gut telling them. But I think when you get still and you listen for the answer, I think your gut is always more powerful than anyone else's advice. No matter who's telling you no, or you're not the right fit or whatever right now.
Yeah, so I have to ask, for you, when did you know that it was going to work?
Well, it was so from the moment we launched It Cosmetics, right? This was in our living room, couldn't afford to pay ourselves, and all the money had gone into our product. And so I remember, this is a funny story that maybe someone listening or watching this will relate to, but after all of these no's from everyone, I was like, all right, you know what? We're going to go direct to consumer. Like, this product is so good. And we couldn't afford to hire anyone to build our site. And so my husband got this big yellow book called HTML for Dummies. And he built the whole first site. And I remember the day it went live. I was like a little kid on Christmas morning. I was so excited because I just knew, right? You say, when do you knew? I felt like I just knew the moment our site went live, it was going to be huge, and everyone would just buy because the product's so good. And I'll never forget the morning the website went live, and I was just, freaking out, so excited. And an hour into it, there were no orders. And then several hours went by, no orders. The end of the first day, no orders. And this went on and on, day after day after day after day. And finally, I said to my husband, which is so easy to do if you work with someone that you have a personal relationship with, I was like, it's broken. Like, you did it wrong. Like, there's no way this website's working and we're just getting no orders. Like, the product is too good. There's no way. This went on and on and on. And we were weeks into getting no orders. And then I'll never forget the day our very first order came in. I was like screaming, running around the living room. I was so excited. And my husband comes up to me and he goes, that was me. He goes, I placed the order to prove to you our website's not broken. And I was just like, oh. And so it was just like this for a long time. There was crazy moments with investors that I had hoped were going to be kind of like, the person that was going to save it all and get us into retailers. And I just got some of the most painful no's there. But it was one big moment that happened on QVC, was the real moment I knew. And this was over 3 years into the business. But something happened. And when you just feel like the stars align, or you feel like a congruency with your knowing and what's happening in the universe, and you just feel like a God moment, or whatever you want to call it. After years of QVC saying no, and that's the live 24-hour shopping channel, they broadcast to 100 million homes, and they're really large in the US in particular, and in some other countries around the world as well. But they had said no. I got their head guy on the phone once after a few years of hearing no. I got him on the phone, and his name's Alan Burke, and he was like, thank you. We've reviewed your product with all the buyers, and it's unanimous that you're not the right fit for QVC or for our customers. So there were a lot of not just like, oh no, not now, but like, no, right? So we've been hearing no for so long. And I was at a beauty trade show demonstrating our product, and met one of the QVC hosts and talked to the buyers. And making a long story short, but I kind of went for it. You're not supposed to leave your booth, but I kind of went for it, and just finally went up to one of the buyers in person and just like pitched the brand and poured my heart out. And I was freaking out. I remember sweat running down my whole thing. Anyways, every entrepreneur who's almost broke knows this feeling, but I was just like, you don't want to seem desperate, but you also like don't want to have any regret. So you just go for it. Poured my heart out to her, and we got one shot. We got a yes, and we got one big shot on QVC. And not only was this moment about to be the moment I knew this is going to be really big. But it's also the moment I learned, one of the most powerful lessons as it pertains to authenticity as a founder. And so what happened was we got a yes that they would give us one shot, which was a 10-minute segment live on their broadcast. And at that point, we were doing just 2 to 3 orders a day on our website, which did work. And but that was all we were doing. And they said in this 10-minute window, in order to hit their sales goal, we would need to sell over 6,000 units of our concealer. And we had no money. So we started applying for SBA loans. 22 banks said no. The 23rd bank, which was California Bank and Trust, said yes. And they gave us an SBA loan just to cover the QVC purchase order. And right, for this one big shot. And then, Nathan, I learned it's consignment. It's a consignment deal, which was like, oh, we're not even, so if anyone listening isn't familiar with consignment, what our terms meant were that, we had to pay for, manufacture, ship in all over 6,000 units of product. But if I went live on the air and nothing sold, or just a few sold, we had to take it all back. And we wouldn't be paid for it. And by the way, if it was like a big breaking news day or something, no one's gonna watch the TV shopping channel, and then you're totally screwed. And so there's all these like risk factors, which normally you should never, right? As an entrepreneur, as a founder, you should never accept a purchase order you can't afford to lose, like ever. And but at this point, we were sort of out of options, and we were most likely not going to make it anyways. And so we said yes. And in this process, we hired a couple of third-party consultants that are awesome, and they help a lot of people sell their product in store and their products on QVC. But here's what happened is they all told me the same thing, which was, okay, if you're going to have a chance at succeeding, because most companies that go on QVC, they're not able to hit the sales goals, so they don't come back. They all told me the same thing. If you're going to have your best chance at succeeding, here's what you need to do. In your 10-minute segment, we want you, you need to use this type of model, which was all flawless skin, kind of like you'd see in beauty ads. And you need to do it this way. And I would say to them, okay, but that's not authentic to like why I created this brand. And I would say like, what if, I put a model in her 70s, and then I put another model who's dealing with acne. And then what if I show my own, like I take my makeup off and show my bright red rosacea on national television, and then I prove how the product works. And like, they were mortified, you know what I mean? And they were for me, like they really wanted me to succeed. But again, they'd only seen one type of way succeed. And so I was in this big dilemma, and I flew out to QVC, which is in the state of Pennsylvania in the United States, and I got in a rental car, and I was there a week early, and I sat in this rental car, praying, crying. Like I felt like I remember watching the front door of the building and people going in and out all day, and I knew like the next time I walked through those doors, I was either going to be bankrupt or like my whole life would be changed, but I didn't know which one it was going to be. And I think everyone can relate to this situation where like I was tempted. If I'm going to be really honest, I sat in that car and I was tempted to like not do it authentically. I'm like, well, maybe I would think things like, well, maybe if I do it their way and it works, and then I can make some money, not go bankrupt, then I'll try it my way. Like I had all those thoughts. But I also know you can't fake authenticity. I also know that like there's no way, and this is what a lot of people get wrong in their businesses. There is no way to have a human connection with someone else, like a true connection, unless you show up fully authentically, like for better or worse. There's just no way. And people that even know that forget that your relationship with your customer is the same. It's the same. And I remember sitting in that car going, if I'm truly going to connect with, every person watching at home, like I have to fully show up with my authentic intention for this product. And I remember thinking, who is my customer? And I kept imagining this single mom, like folding laundry, who was too busy to remember she was beautiful and that she mattered. And I just had this moment in the car where I was like, you know what? I would rather have her turn on her television, even if she's going to give me 5 seconds of her time. I want her to see me showing women that look like her and calling them beautiful and meaning it. Like, even if she buys nothing, I'd rather stand for that than like sell a whole bunch of product and stand for nothing. And so I knew what I had to do, but we know what we have to do often, and it's not the easy thing. It's usually the scary thing, and the risky thing. And I remember walking into the building and into the studio, and we were going to get that one shot. And so I walked in, and right in the big studio, there's these cameras, and the host was there. And then there was a clock that was on the ground that was set at 10 minutes. And then there was a live clock to tell you what was happening in the show. And then, Nathan, I learned that, like, okay, it's all on the line, right? I have this 10-minute window. Everything's on the line. And then I learned you're not guaranteed the 10 minutes. Like, if you go live and your clock starts going and you're not hitting sales goals, like, you could be a minute in and they cut your time all the way down to like 2 minutes left. And I was like, oh gosh, I'm not even guaranteed this. And so it was wild. And one of the scariest and best days of my career and also of my life, I remember the moment the clock started and we were like at 9:59, 9:58, 9:50, and I was like, and I was shaking, I was sweating. Like, I remember I had on 2 pairs of Spanx, which wasn't because of how it wasn't like I needed to look a certain way. I was trying to make sure sweat did not go through my dress. And I wasn't nervous about TV. I was just like, the whole company, like the weight of the whole company was like, it felt like it was hanging in that moment. And I remember the moment on live television where they brought up my before shot. So it was a barefaced before shot where you could see my bright red, bumpy rosacea. And I remember walking over to all the models, and they were every age and skin tone and skin challenge and size and shape and then I didn't know how we were doing, but I wasn't cut yet, so I knew that was good. And then we got down to it was like 1 minute left, and the host was like, the deep shade's almost gone, the tan shade's almost sold out. And it was literally right at the 10-minute mark where this giant sold out sign came up across the screen. And this was the moment, when you say what's the moment you knew, I remember tears streaming down my face. And I remember the producers were worried I was going to faint. I guess new people faint sometimes because of pressure. And they cut from my presentation and went to like Dyson vacuum or something. And I remember my husband came running through the double doors of the studio, and I was just sobbing. And I'm like, real women have spoken. And I remember he just looked at me and he put his fist up in the air and he's like, we're not going bankrupt. And I was just like, ah! And it was just like this moment where it felt like I risked it all. And at the same time, all I did was make a decision from a place of congruency and authenticity. And what I continued to learn is, as we grew and grew and grew, we eventually became the largest beauty brand in QVC's history. And it is to this day. And I was doing over 250 live shows a year myself for many years. And built a team of over 1,000. So I have other people going on. But what I learned after seeing tens of thousands of brands come through the doors and meeting their entrepreneurs and their founders and their heads of sales going on the air, most of them don't make it. And the one big thing I learned is, like, while authenticity alone doesn't automatically guarantee success, that inauthenticity guarantees failure. And what I would observe is that the very few people that would make it with their brands, they were never the ones that, even necessarily had the best product or the most money behind their marketing or anything else. It was when the person they had go on air was the same on air as they were in the green room. Whether they were extroverted or introverted or wild, or it didn't matter. but there is that sort of like congruency and that through line of authenticity that you can't fake, and people feel it. And so the people that were truly authentic and who they were in the green room, but then all of a sudden they're live in front of 100 million homes and they're the same person, that's who customers would connect with. And for me, that was one of the most powerful lessons, because, you know, we're now in a digital world where everyone's worried about how they're showing up in every digital platform and direct to consumer and on social media. And now more than ever, people can get distracted by what everyone else is doing. And the second you start to dilute your own authenticity or your own secret sauce, that's when you're in trouble. And so I think now more than ever, this lesson is so important.
Yeah, wow. What an incredible story. I'm lost for words.
Do you feel that your faith and your intuition is the same thing? Is that the way that God speaks to you, or the higher power speaks to you to guide you on the choices that you're making?
Yeah, I think so. I think every one of us has an intuition or a knowing, and I think a lot of people haven't heard their knowing in a long time. But I think our knowing is always right. And for me, yeah, that's how I hear God talking to me. Is, you know, I've never heard him speak out loud. I've never, but I hear it through that kind of that still small voice, or that knowing, or that gut instinct. And you know, a big part of my journey, like a lot of people see the kind of the highlight reel, or maybe they read kind of the press story that's like, oh, you know, Denny's waitress starts idea in her living room and builds, you know, $1 billion company. But my real journey, my real story is like a girl who went from not believing in herself to learning how to believe in herself, and not really even knowing how to hear that own knowing, or hear that still small voice, to learning how to hear it and then trust it. And I think with every woman, but also every business owner, every esthetician, every spa owner, I think that, you know, I can talk about business and tips and all that for a million hours. But when I look at what made the difference in my journey, I really think it was learning how to go from not believing in myself to believing in myself, and learning how to hear my gut and then make this decision to trust it. I think so many times we are surrounded by so much noise, so much uncertainty, definitely in the last 14 months, so much noise, and our self-doubt has grown so large in the last, especially 14 months. But then we have, you know, the noise of the self-doubt, but then the noise of other people's opinions, the noise of how difficult, like in my journey, I had lack of proof of success around me for a long time about my dream. And sometimes those things can get so loud that we almost can't even hear our own knowing anymore. And so I feel like, it's so important that we all learn to ignite our light again, because we've been dimming it for a while, but that also we learn, really, I think the victory in life is learning how to get still, how to hear your own knowing, and then making a decision to trust yourself. That's when I think we step into our calling, and into the person we're born to be, versus like staying in our comfort zone, in our self-doubt, and talking ourselves out of our own truth.
So yes, you listened to yourself. Yes, you trusted your intuition, but yes, you also worked 100-hour weeks, right? Yeah. So which I don't think I needed to. Well, go ahead. I'm going to get on her. I did so many things wrong, Daniela, so many things wrong. And I share them all for the first time in this book, because I don't want people to make the same mistakes I made. And you know what I mean? If I could save anybody nights crying themselves to sleep or self-doubt, then it's all worth it. Well, it's what's really interesting to me. So in the past, you know, COVID, all the things, right? Estheticians have done a lot of pivoting, and there's a lot of women out there who have said, hey, I want to start my own line. I realized I was going 100 miles an hour this way. And when I had a moment to pause, I realized I actually wanted to go that way. And so there's a lot of people interested in private label and formulating and all the things. Mm-hmm. And you've got to have drive. You've got to have, you know, your why has to be in the right place. But you got down to less than $1,000 in your bank account and you kept going, right? That's scary. That's scary. And so what combination, like, what were you going through at that point when you were at less than $1,000, like you must have had so many people saying, what are you doing? Is this right for your family? You know, like,
are you sure you should have quit your job?
Thing. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. And that's hard. And, this idea I talk about even and believe it about the power of our own microphone and who we let speak into it, learning to turn up the volume and turn down the volume. So important, it was, my journey of I thought, and there might be a lot of people listening with us right now that think this too, or maybe they're smarter than I was. Hopefully they're smarter than I was. I thought if I can pour everything I have into creating a product and it's actually really good and it works, then it's just going to sell. And people are just going to hear about it. If you build it,
they will come. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. I thought that. And then I learned my own experience wasn't that. I learned, oh, wow, this is really hard. And when you can't afford to hire other people, you have to get really scrappy and figure out how to do kind of everything you don't know how to do the best way you know how to do it. I think that a couple of things, I developed a toolbox. I call it my imaginary toolbox because it's usually in my head, but I also keep it in my notes app on my phone and I write it in journals. I have a toolbox that I lean on that I think is important in addition to the why, but I have a toolbox where I put, other people's stories, underdog stories, turn victorious, quotes.
Oh, is that when you were talking about just reading all the quotes? Like,
yeah. And just going back to, and just even like stories of inspiration, right? Like you mentioned hearing on Joel Osteen, him share a story, and like, that would be something I would hear. And I have Joel Osteen stories I put in my toolbox and I go back to them when I need to be reminded of who I am or where I come from doesn't have to determine where I'm going, or stories of people who, didn't come from the right family or the right education or weren't qualified, but they overcame everything to make it because they believed in what they were doing. And, I have a toolbox that I go back to lean on. That's something that I pull from. Also, though, for everyone wanting to start this idea in their living room or start their business,
which is happening.
It's happening. I think that I think there's really big pluses and really big minuses right now. I think the big pluses are that there's kind of like no barriers to entry anymore, right? Almost anybody can create a company, a skincare business, a makeup business. It used to be really hard because you had these giants of companies that controlled the department store floor space and controlled who got into the professional channels to be then sold to, right? All of those things. And barriers to entry have really dropped. And a lot of people are able to build businesses now going direct to consumer. So that makes it easier. What makes it harder is the market's way more flooded now. And it's even more difficult to have people know that your product exists, to get the word out. And also there's a whole other side of this, which would probably be way too boring for your podcast. I won't get into, but if you ever want to ask me about it, the whole other side about all the stuff I had to learn the hard way about regulatory compliance and FDA label regulations and clinicals, all the stuff that, we were, after 3 years of everyone telling us no, our huge first account was QVC. And the blessing in that is we had to go through all the unsexy stuff. Like they're so strict with QC and quality control and regulatory compliance. And at the time I was like, oh gosh, this is a lot of work, but I'm so grateful I went through it because all the clinical testing, all the, allergy testing, all the stuff they make you go through, most retailers don't have you go through any of that. And nowadays you can sell straight online without having to understand or go through any of that either.
That is the sexy stuff to our listeners, because one of our coaching calls that we have, we talk about that all the time, is like, the behind the scenes of ingredients and all the things. So, but yes, right now we're talking about the book and your story. And I want to kind of circle back here, because one of the things that I kept getting out of the book, and for those of you listening, this is actually the first physical book that I have read in so long. We have babies about the same. I have a 3-year-old and a 10-month-old. So being pregnant. I had a pandemic baby. It's like Audible is the thing. And I said, no, I'm going to get the physical copy. And I'm so glad I did because of the pictures that are in the squirrel picture. Oh, I read that at like the perfect time. But if you guys have the Audible, get the physical book. Like, it is so worth it to be able, and then the beautiful picture you shared with your daughter, like that, there are just so many moments that it's so open. Like, I feel like I know you, I've never met you in my life. And I'm going through this book and like, wow, like she really just bared her soul, which is so beautiful.
Yeah.
But what really came through in the book is how driven you are by your why. And this why to change the beauty industry, to change the way that, to really make real women the star of the show. And I'm curious, now that you've sold your company, now that you've become a mom, now that you're in a different place in your life, are you still driven by that same why? Or has it kind of expanded in a way now that you're an author and so on?
Yeah. Thank you for that. I think too, the power of your why. And one of the things I talk about in here, that I'm so excited you're doing a book club and everything else, because I think doing the work of the why, but then peeling back the layers and going so much deeper on the why beneath the why. I think that so many people, whether they are estheticians or spa owners or launching their own product line, or a person that just has a goal in their goal journal, so many people will come up with a why, if they've even done that, right? A lot of people don't do that. They'll see companies have a big why or a mission statement, but then for their own goals, they don't attach a why to it. And I think it's so important to do that, because it makes us so much less likely to give up. When we have a really strong why, we can lean on it when times get tough. And one thing I just want to share, especially for your community, is the importance of not just having a why that sounds really good, that when you share it with other people, they're like, that's amazing. Often that why still isn't deep enough to make you not quit when times get tough, or to, keep going when you feel like no one else is believing in you. And for my why, I could have just said, oh, I want to create a product that solves my own problems, or I want to create products that help so many other people. And that would have been true. It would have been true. But one thing, and again, I did so many things wrong, as that I talk about in the book. One of the things that I did right was I peeled back the layers on the why, like to the why beneath the why. And this is what I want to challenge everyone to do as well, to something that was really deep. And for me, I had realized my whole life, I had seen these kind of commercials on television and in beauty ads, and of what the world told me beautiful looked like. And I always aspired to look like that. I loved it. But as a little girl, I realized, oh, wow, they always kind of made me feel like I wasn't enough. And when I grew up, when I eventually got rosacea and all the things that I was like, why can't I find makeup that works? And then I realized, oh, I've never seen a model with rosacea saying, hey, this is great. And so I had this deep why that came from a lifetime of, I guess, the feeling of not enoughness, where I realized, oh, let me not just create a beauty company, but put real women and men, all different ages, shapes, sizes, skin tones, skin challenges, call them beautiful and mean it for every little girl out there. Like, maybe I can do this in time to prevent other little girls out there who are about to see these images and start doubting themselves, right? And help shift perspective on what is beauty for every adult who still struggles with that. And so that why was really deep for me. And I think that, for everyone in your community, whether their hopes and goals are to, work as an esthetician and just feel joy in their job for the next 40 years, or maybe their dream is to start their own product line or their own, expand their spa business, whatever it is. I just think peeling back the layers. Because a lot of times people will have a why that's like, oh, I want to help people, or I want
to make women look and feel their best.
Yes, I want to make women look and feel their best. That's a great one. I want to pay for my kids' college. It could be any of these things. And they sound so great when you share them with other people. You gotta go deeper. And it doesn't mean it's a different why. It means take that why and start going deeper, because I feel like we have to be doing something that's truly meaningful to us, that's so much bigger than ourselves, to be able to lean on and keep going. And I think that's so important. And that's one of the things that helped me keep going during all the years of rejection. It was tough. And anyone in your community who is starting a product business, I'm excited for them to read the book, because I talk also just about, like all the scrappy things and the unglamorous things and the things that what do you do when people copy your product? What do you do when, all those kind of things. But just having that why to lean back on, I think, is so important. And I think a lot of people put pressure on themselves for like, what's your purpose? And I think we can have several purposes. And I think that they can continue to evolve. My whole life, I thought I was I would watch Oprah growing up, and I thought, oh, one day I'm going to, share other people's stories with the world and have a talk show. And I was working in my dream job, I thought, as a news anchor. And, but when I got rosacea, and when I started realizing there's this need in the beauty industry for products and a whole new message, I had to know, I learned that knowing when to let go of a dream is as important as knowing when to go after one. And my purpose shifted in that moment. And I chose to kind of trust myself in that. And, now as a mom, definitely, definitely. And also just, I had a moment, I don't talk about this in the book at all, but just to share with you, I had a moment about 2 years ago where I'd all of a sudden realized, oh my gosh, I was in my living room for years. We built to bigger offices, over 1,000 employees, sold to L'Oreal. And I was sitting in this corner office that was brand new. It was my first time sitting in this brand new corner office at the It Cosmetics headquarters. And our new offices were over 60,000 square feet. And my office overlooked the whole Manhattan skyline. And I had this huge bathroom. I don't know why, I just felt like a bathroom was a big deal. Like, I have a bathroom. And it was like an office bigger than almost any home I'd ever lived in. And I sat there in this moment knowing a couple things. And I just was like sobbing in my office going, wow, this is so beautiful. The art on the wall. Where am I? This is not how I was raised. But also, wow, like, I made it. Like that dream became this reality. I felt like I was in the movie Devil Wears Prada, looking around, going, where am I? And I could have stayed there, right? But the mission and the purpose and everything that I had dreamed of, L'Oreal's done such an amazing job at building that out. And, I stayed on as CEO for 3 years post-acquisition, and we doubled the size of the company the first 2 years post-acquisition. The team is incredible. And I sat there in that moment going, oh, wow, right now I could start doing all the cool stuff. Like right now I'm in this office that the world tells me is what significance looks like. I could now go to all the fancy parties. I could do all these things, but I had I'm on the inside, but then I had this feeling of, oh, but you're supposed to serve, in a whole different way that impacts people. You're supposed to share the stuff you've gone through to help other people. Yeah. And I knew it. And it was weird because a lot of people are scared to leave the things that make us feel important or significant. And I knew if I stayed there, it wasn't where I was supposed to be anymore. And it was really hard. I sobbed my eyes out sitting in that office, and I made the decision to step away, and it was really hard, but it's because I felt, to your question, I felt my why and my purpose was transitioning to something new. And I knew if I ever wrote a book, I'd want to donate 100% of the proceeds, which I am, to Feeding America and Together Rising. But I also know that when we really share our stories, that's when we all come together and get stronger and rise higher and go, oh, I don't want to make that mistake. Or, oh, that's how Jamie handled that person telling her she's not enough. I'm not going to let anyone look me in the eye.
Relatable. The book is so relatable. And I mean, we both have suffered miscarriage, And just sharing that, I think for so many women, there's a shame around that. And there's a scary piece around that. And I remember when I told my community, I felt like I had to tell them because I was just going underground. I needed time to heal and couldn't show up in the same way.
Yeah.
And I received at least 50 emails from women sharing their story and saying thank you and for sharing. And I realized, like, on such a small level, just by me sharing that I went through that and the pain, and that, like, I'm okay and you can keep going and it's normal and there's nothing wrong with you. And so when I was reading that section of your book, I'm like, this is incredible. Just this alone, sharing that, like, this happens and you're okay and you're normal and you can keep going and you can be a huge success and you can have a family, was such a beautiful piece too for women to hear, because that can be devastating. That can stop you from going after your why, you know? So such a big piece.
Yeah. And, it's really hard when we're in the midst of struggle and setback. And I, just to share one thing, I did this kind of big book launch event this week where I invited a couple friends to speak. One of them was Robin Roberts of Good Morning America. And she shared something. You just reminded me of it. I want to share in case this also as a service inspires, your whole community too. We were talking about our greatest accomplishments and things like that. And she said something, and Robin has won every award you can possibly win, and she's in the Broadcast Hall of Fame, and she still wakes up all of America, Good Morning America, every single day. She's won every sports award, everything. And she said the things that fulfill her, the things that she is the most proud of in her life, aren't anything she's accomplished. It's the things she's overcome. So the things that literally bring her the most joy, most fulfillment, most that she's most proud of are the things she's overcome.
The biggest opportunity for growth.
Yeah. And just completely. And then just knowing we're strong enough to get through them and then can be there. Like, I'm sure you're sharing your story, helps everyone else process their own experiences, especially people that have been keeping them to themselves or not really sure or feeling alone in them, right? Feeling like it's just them or something's wrong with them. And, when I was I went through a decade of not being able to carry pregnancy to full term, and had several different times where that was really challenging. And I was hiding it for a long time. None of my employees knew. And we were doing fertility treatments and all the things. And, I felt like my body was betraying me, like my body was failing me, and what was supposed to happen wasn't happening. And there's so many emotions that come with that. And, I had also found out by surprise I was adopted, and there's so many things. But
you guys have to get the book.
Sort of one last line of questioning, and it's how, what I have experienced in my own life and having so many amazing folks on the show, yourself, Brene Brown, Arlen Hamilton, Richard Branson, so many folks who have created the success. It seems like there's a bunch of common threads, but one that I want to pull in right now and get your take is you scratched your own itch, right? That this solution to the problems that you were having with makeup as an on-air anchor it could be seen that is obtuse and out there, and how many people have this problem of being on camera and makeup cracking, and yet here you are on the other side of creating, as you mentioned, the largest beauty brand that's going right now. You solved your own problem. How important was that? Did it, and what are the, give me like a little 360 on that. What were your thoughts at the time and your thoughts now, if you were going to give advice to someone? Because there are so many people that not only do they just have an instinct of maybe a direction to walk, but they don't know what to do, and they're looking to solve other people's problems. And I have a fear that if you try and solve other people's problems when the going gets tough, you don't have the conviction. But these are my words, and I want to hear yours.
Yeah, I think that, I think we always hear the classic entrepreneurial story, right? Of like, oh, I have a problem and nothing out there solves it. And I created something that did, and now it's a big success. So there's so many examples of that out there. But I also think that makes so many people put so much pressure on themselves that they think that they need to have something so, specific or personal to them for it to work, or they need to be solving their own problem for it to work. I think that, meaning for their dream to become successful or to catch on or to, um, I think that every single person, if they really follow like their own, how do I say this? It's almost like a gravitational force that you feel, right? You're knowing, that knowing inside of what brings you joy, what do you have that just feels right, and you feel in flow when you're doing and you feel called to do. I feel like that's the magic, not do I have a specific problem for me that I need to solve. I think that while that can be your gravitational pull, and that can be a really, really strong one because you have a really personal connection to it, I don't think that has to be there for somebody's dream to be as valid, as successful, as everything. I think that it's, I'm sure there are people that just feel pulled to paint on a canvas and express themselves, and their work serves the world and helps heal humanity through love and inspires other people and helps brighten their day and helps them understand themselves better. I think that us really learning, again, going back to knowing, what is that thing that brings us joy, that makes us feel in alignment with our own, calling. And it's okay if you don't know that yet, right? It's okay if you haven't really figured that out yet. But I think it's a journey of paying attention to what feels right in your soul when you're doing it and when you're going after it and when you're creating it. And I think that if you don't have a specific problem, right? And to your point, if you're solving other people's problems, is that going to be enough? And what I would say is that, whether or not it's a specific problem to you, we hear so many thought leaders, and I know you probably had so many of them on your show, talking about how do you identify your why and your mission and why you're doing what you're doing. And I think that, the biggest mistake I see people make in going after their dreams, or why they quit, even though they keep feeling like they're supposed to keep going, but they quit. I think a lot of people identify a why or their mission for why they're doing what they're doing. I think they identify one that sounds really good and it makes a lot of sense. And when they share it with other people, they're like, oh, that's so good. But at the end of the day, it's not deep enough and it's not meaningful enough to them personally to keep going when times are tough. And so if your problem you're solving isn't personal to you, I think whatever you're doing can equally work if your why is deep enough and personal enough to you. And an example of this would be, talking about solving other people's problems. So if I had created my makeup company and said, oh, I want to solve my own skin problems, I don't think that alone is a deep enough why, honestly, for me. If it was, oh, I want to help so many other women, right? This would be an example of one that sounds so good. I want to help millions of other women solve their skin problems. And that was my why. If I shared that with anyone else, they'd be like, you're amazing. That's so great. But like, is that really deep enough to keep me going every time I got knocked down for years? And so, or I want to make a lot of money, or I want to pay for my kids' college one day, whatever it is. Those things all sound so good. And what I would love to challenge everyone in your audience to do, because I think you have to attach a why to any goal or any dream, right? A lot of people keep like a goal journal and they write their goals, but they never attach a why to each one. and then they give up. I would challenge everyone for whether it's their creation or why they're creating, or their passion, or even their hobby, or a personal goal, or their business goal, is to really know your why, but then go, wait a minute, can I peel back the layers on this why and go way deeper? And what I mean by that is, if my why would have been, let me solve my own problems on my skin, let me solve all the problems for so many other women and men out there who have given up on makeup, I don't think it would have been enough for me to keep going. But because, I had this moment, Chase, where I realized, oh my gosh, my whole life, all the ads I saw as a little girl showing me what beauty is, like, I love them. I aspire to look like those commercials, but they, even as a little girl, always made me feel like I wasn't enough. And my vision of trying to create a beauty company that redefined what beauty looks like, for every little girl out there who's about to start doubting herself, and every grown person who still does. Like, that why was so painful to me from a whole life of identifying why it mattered to me to do this, that's really one of the biggest things that helped keep me going also during all the times of getting knocked down, or hearing no again, or when self-doubt would enter my head again. And so I don't think that your company or your business has to be solving your own problem, but I do think that it has to be attached to a why that is so deeply personal to you, that it helps sustain you in those times when it feels like you're the only person believing in yourself.
So,
Yeah.
You've obviously reached this incredible level of success, and another big theme in the book is goals and being intentional. And my question is, there's a passage early on in the book where you discuss goal setting. You even discuss, those keeping, goal setting journals. And I guess my question is, can you be intentional about setting goals and also be someone who's open to enjoying the ride and seeing where the ride takes you? And how do we avoid being detrimentally single-minded?
Yeah, such a good question. I think, and it's funny because in the book, by the way, I don't even know if I've shared this. I'm donating 100% of the proceeds from the book, by the way, all my author proceeds, to Feeding America and Together Rising.
Amazing.
I don't know if I shared that. Anyways, we've raised 2.2 million meals so far this week, which is really cool. But so I go there with the mistakes I made, by the way, on burnout, on like all the things. But so I talk about a lot that I did wrong, but to answer your question, one of the things about goal setting, I think this is that really for every person, I think it's so important to enjoy the ride, like to go with it, like set goals. But one of the things I talk about is, a lot of people have a goal and then it never comes to fruition. And I think it's because they don't attach a why to every goal, and not just a why, right? We hear a lot of people say like, oh, what's your why? And companies have whys and mission statements. But a lot of people, especially individuals, and I think this is really important, especially for the Glam Hive audience, anyone who is doing their stylist business, their artistry business, or really just any human being, is that we often will come up with a why for our goal or for our business, and it sounds really good. And when we say it to other people, they're like, oh, that's powerful. And then we stop, but we never actually do the work of like peeling back the layers. Yeah. I think this is really important, and identifying like the why beneath the why. Yeah. And I think that when you have a deep why for what you're doing, I think that it drives you to something greater than yourself. Yeah. So your goals might change, right? You might go with the flow and leave one dream and go after another, but your deeper why for your hopes of impact on the world, I think when they're greater than yourself, I think that's huge. And just one quick example is, for 3 years, I every time I got knocked down or another no, I still get no's all the time. But like every time in those years of not seeing any proof of success, you know, one of the things that kept me going was I had done this work on peeling back the why beneath the why. And I talk about how to do this and believe it in my book a lot, but and here's what I mean. So because I created It Cosmetics, like, you know, I could have just said to myself, oh, my why is to solve my own problems,
Yeah.
or my why is to help so many other people who can't find makeup that works for them.
Yeah.
And if I would have shared that with someone else, that would have been like, oh, that's so great. You want to help a ton of people. And I did want to do both those things. But like, what I did early on was do the work of realizing, like, oh wow, my whole life I've seen these, you know, television commercials where everyone's photoshopped, and I always wanted to look like that, but yet they always made me feel not enough.
Yeah.
And I was like, what if I can create a great product, but also like use all different types of models, right? And what if I could try and do whatever I can to shift the definition of beauty for every little kid out there who's about to see these images and start doubting themselves,
Yeah.
and every adult who still does.
Yeah.
And I had that deep, it was like peeling back the layers and going deep. And so, you know, I just want to share for everyone who's joining us today, right now, live, or watching the replays later, who, you know, is a stylist, is an artist, is a creator, is an ideator, is a human being with a goal. This is one of the most important things. And I see so many people never, ever make it. Like, I've had the blessing of meeting tens of thousands of entrepreneurs now. A lot of them give up or they quit.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, one of those reasons is they didn't do the work of going deep on why is it for what they're doing? Why are they doing what they're doing? And how is it of service in a way that's greater than themselves?
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, when we're doing something that's just for us, or just to pay off our house mortgage, or just to, those things sound good, but they're usually not meaningful enough
Yeah.
for us to get back up every time it gets really hard and when
Yeah.
we get knocked down.
And I think what's so great about the book, with that advice, but the book in general, is your story and what you share in the book. It's so appropriate for budding entrepreneurs. And I think everyone has a little budding entrepreneur inside themselves, but it's just good advice in life when things get rough, when you get knocked down, which is going to happen. That kind of advice, finding the why, helps you pick yourself back up, dust yourself off, and keep going, right?
Yeah, and I think that you know, one moment in the book, and you know, I really shared stories that I hope become other things that other people can just put in their own toolbox and pull from when
Yeah.
someone literally tells them they're not going to make it, or when they have friends and family. A lot of us have friends and family around us who we love so much, but when we share our hopes and dreams with them, like, they somehow lower our vibration, or like, because they don't dream the same way, or they don't
Yeah.
have the same types of ambition, or they see what we're doing through the lens of their own fear or
Yeah.
their own lack of experience. And I've heard from so many people, like, I get DMs every single day on Instagram from people saying, like, I have these dreams, but my partner just like doesn't support me, or and it's like, it's learning how, I talk so much about this, learning how to love everyone around us, but how to like take our microphone back from certain people on certain topics, and not hand it to others. And yeah, there's so many things in this book for everybody, really, whether they're an entrepreneur or just someone that has that inkling inside. And the one more thought too to share just really quickly too, Brian, is I don't know if you remember this part in the book, but we were about 2 years into It Cosmetics, and I wouldn't even look at my ATM receipt when it would come out, and I'd have to go get $20 cash.
Yes.
Like, I couldn't handle looking at it. Because I would physically feel ill. I
Yeah.
didn't know how we were going to make it. And we got a big call from a potential investor and a private equity company. And I thought, like, oh my gosh, this is going to be life changing. Like, if they invest in It Cosmetics, A, I'm not going to go bankrupt. And B, I bet that they could use, this was a big private equity company. So they had invested in a lot of the products in grocery stores that like have become household names. I'm like, if they invest in It Cosmetics, maybe they could use their leverage to actually get us into some of these retail stores that keep telling me no over and over and over. I was so excited, and we started doing all the meetings with them, and started the diligence phase, which is when they want you to show them your product pipelines, your, you know, all the things, your budgets, your projections.
Yeah.
And it got down to the final meeting, and I thought, like, this is going to be life changing. And my husband and I flew up for the meeting, and we were standing about 3 feet from the head guy, and they said, you know, congratulations, we love your product, we really believe in it, but it's a no, we're going to pass on investing in IT Cosmetics. And when I said, okay, because I'm so used to hearing no at that point, I'm like, can you tell me why? Like, can you give me feedback? Because, you know, usually feedback is a gift. And this guy was like 3 feet from me, and he says to me, do you want me to be really honest with you? And I'm like, yes, please. And he says, I just don't think women will buy makeup from someone who looks like you with your body and your weight. And I remember this moment. Well, first of all, I went in my car and sobbed my eyes out. But before that happened, I remember 2 things. Like, I remember, and I also felt like a lifetime of body doubt and self-doubt like flood my body. It felt like I was staring my own fear straight in the eye when he was talking to me. But I remember this deep feeling in that moment, Brian, when he said that, I just don't think women will buy makeup from someone who looks like you with your body and your weight. I had this deep feeling, like literally, I remember it like it was yesterday, that said he's wrong. Like, I just felt it, right? I felt it. And I also, it's what's wild is I never felt anger toward him, or like, I didn't even get mad. It hurt, but I didn't get mad, because what I realized, like, I had done the work on why I wanted to do what I was doing. He was impacted by his whole life of seeing ads and images, and in his own mind, you needed to look a certain way to make him money. So he was just as much impacted as me. And in a way, because I had done the work on the why beneath the why, all his rejection did, besides hurt and suck and make me cry myself to sleep, it really fueled me to realize, oh yeah, like this, like things do have to change. And 6 years later, by the way, the day L'Oreal acquired IT Cosmetics.
I was going to say, I definitely remember this part of the book.
It was so good. It was, and listen, I didn't need anything from him. I believe in life, like we get what we give. And anyways, but it was kind of fun that six years later, I heard from him, and the day L'Oreal acquired IT Cosmetics, it was like the homepage of the Wall Street Journal. It was kind of everywhere out there, because they announced it, because they're a public company. And so he reached out and he said, congratulations, so happy for you. I was wrong. And I learned it would have been the most successful investment in his company's history had he invested. But the other thing, oh gosh, this is like my favorite topic. Anyone who's with us now are going to watch the replays, just to share this before I forget. There's a famous saying, Brian, rejection is God's protection. Some people say rejection's the universe's protection. Anybody who's going through a season of rejection right now, or a setback, like for me, it was years of rejection. But when I look back now, even though like when you're in it, it sucks and it doesn't make sense, and it doesn't feel unfair, all those things. Like, had he believed in me, I was so desperate at the time, I probably would have just given him most of the company for almost no money. But because he didn't believe in me, by the time L'Oreal bought us, we were still the largest shareholder. And so it was like the best. It was the best that he didn't believe in me at the time, even though when we're in that season of rejection,
doesn't feel great.
Ladies and gentlemen, rock this house and welcome to the stage, Jamie Kern Lima! Baby Kern Lima!
Every single one of us has had someone tell us we're not enough. Every single one of us has had someone say words to us that hurt.